Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell and welcome to my first vlog of 2025. So in this vlog, we're gonna be reading books about the sea. And this started because if you saw my 25 to read in 2025 video, then you already know 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is one of the books that I must read this year. This is a classic and it is also a book that I hauled in 2024 that I have not had the chance to read yet. So it meets two of my goals for the year, which is to read all 13 books that I purchased last year that I haven't had time to read in 2024, and also to read at least 8 classics. So this one is a must read. Another book that I hauled last year that I didn't get the chance to read last year was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Looking at the cover of both of these, they have tentacled creatures on the front. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'll just pick another book with some sort of octopus or kraken or something on the front, and that'll complete the 3 books for the vlog. I thought this should be really easy because I have other books on my shelf that also have tentacles. I have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. I have The Mountain in the Sea. I've already read those books, so I thought this will be easy. Turns out it wasn't. I couldn't find another book on my TBR that had tentacles that I haven't already read. So I was like, okay, well, technically this one I think is set in an aquarium and not at sea, but I figured close enough. I'll just find another book about the sea. And I thought this would also be pretty easy because I've read Sea of Tranquility, I've read House in the Cerulean Sea. Sea seems to be a common word in a lot of different books that I have on my TBR. So I looked through all of those. I think the 2 that appealed to me the most, that I'm most anxious to read right now, are Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield and Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Those are 2 very different books, but Tress of the Emerald Sea is like a cozy fantasy and Our Wives Under the Sea is kind of like a gothic horror. However, I just read Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, and I read all of the Stormlight Archive for the first time in 2024, and Wind and Truth I just finished a couple of weeks ago. So I'm taking a break from Brandon Sanderson for a while. Stormlight Archive was amazing, but I want to make space for other authors. So that means Our Wives Under the Sea is going to be the other book in this vlog. So these 2 and that one. These are all going to be very different books, I think. This is a sci-fi classic that was written way back in the day. This is a contemporary book about a woman who makes friends with an octopus at her local aquarium. And Our Wives Under the Sea is, like I mentioned, a horror book about a woman who disappears on a deep sea voyage and then comes back and is changed by the experience. That's what I know. That's how we're kicking off the year this year, with some undersea books, or sea creature books at least. So let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books, or perhaps what is your favorite book that either has sea in the title or has some sort of tentacles on the cover. Yeah, and I will check in once I've started reading some of these books. Okay, hi. I devoured Our Wives Under the Sea. It completely consumed me. I stayed up till almost 1 o'clock in the morning finishing it last night. I couldn't put it down. This is one of the most visceral books that I have ever read. I was totally captivated. I decided to read it first because it was the book that I didn't have, and the library hold came in, and other people were waiting for the book. So I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and get this one out of the way. Then I can read the other 2 at my leisure since I already own them. And right away, I just was captured by the writing. It is so beautiful and visceral. There's so much body horror in this book, and even the parts that aren't specifically about a body just have that sort of gross language inserted throughout. For example, this is from page 82. It says, "Summer slunk into the brickwork, bloating the building outward, pressure in the walls. The space above the oven swelled and leaked some viscous substance like a body pierced between its ribs." Oh my God. It's like that the whole time. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what this book is about. It is about two married women married to each other. And one of them is like a marine biologist, and she goes pretty regularly, it seems like, on research missions on like submarines to study underwater life. And one of them she goes on, and she's supposed to be on like 3 weeks, and she doesn't come back for 6 months. And her wife just assumes that she's dead. She can't get any information out of the company that she works for, and she's pretty much just accepted and started grieving. And then her wife suddenly returns from this mission, and she is changed. She is different. She no longer acts like the wife that she remembers, and something is happening to her. The wife the marine biologist who returns, she starts spending all of her time in the bathroom. She always has the taps running. Her gums are bleeding. There's like weird fluids everywhere. And the wife who stayed behind is trying to figure out how to cope with this, and who is this person that returned and she's living with now that isn't the wife that she knew. It just completely unravels. This book has two different perspectives, both of the wives. And Miri is the wife who stayed behind, and Leah is the marine biologist. And the chapters from Leah's perspective are flashing back to her time on the submarine, and it's just a very small research vessel. It was only her and 2 other researchers on board, and their ship sunk, and all of the like electricity went out, and they were stuck basically on the ocean floor for like 6 months with no light. Like their shower worked, and they had plenty of food, and that's basically it. And it's about the unraveling of the crew as they all slowly start to lose their minds with no stimulation down there. And then Miri's chapters kind of flip-flop back and forth between the present day, where she is watching Leah come undone and be traumatized, and then also flashing back to earlier times in their relationship when they were happy, and seeing that contrast of how Leah has changed. And when I tell you I was crying at the end of this book, I was absolutely in a different place. This is one of the weirdest and most beautiful books that I have ever read. It wasn't always body horror. The writing was just beautiful in general. And so another passage that I highlighted says, "My heart is a thin thing these days, shred of paper blown between the spaces in my ribs." Oh, there were just so many beautifully written lines, and the story was so wild and out there, and I loved it. This book has been hyped up for several years now. I feel like booktubers read it and rave about it all the time, and I gotta say, I was skeptical. I thought this was gonna be super overhyped, and I was not expecting to love this, and I loved this. One of the best books I have read in a very long time. Did I just read my favorite book of 2025? The first book that I completed in the year. I can't imagine this not being in my top 10 of the year at the end of the year. I mean, we'll see what happens, but wow. Wow. I have to look up Julia Armfield now and see if she has other books out. This was crazy. This was a really, really crazy book. I ate it up. I was disgusted and I couldn't look away. Okay, so I'll check in next time I start a new book. Bye.
Oh baby, I love your madness. It's so incredible.
time to talk about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. First of all, I absolutely love this edition of this book. It's by Paper Mill Press. As you can see, it's just beautiful. It has a few little additional illustrations on the inside, not too many, but it's just the pages feel good, the cover feels good. I love it. It's like somewhere in between what I would call a paperback and a hardback, because it's like a really stiff paperback. Anyway, where am I? I'm on page 323 out of 500. So over halfway. I would say the first probably 25% of this book I was having a good time, and now I'm just really bored. If you're unfamiliar with the plot of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the main character is a naturalist, essentially like a biologist, a scientist, and this is set in the year 1866. The book starts off and there has been sightings by fishermen and merchants and whoever all over the sea or all over the oceans that there is some sort of giant sea creature that is like attacking ships or is being sighted or whatnot, and people don't know what it is. This professor is I think he's a professor. This naturalist is a believer that this must be some sort of giant narwhal, he calls it. It's like the only thing he can think of that would have like a tusk like strong enough to penetrate these ships that have been attacked by it. But the people are saying it's like 250 feet long. It's like crazy big. It's taken the world by storm. Everyone's talking about it, and the ship is commissioned to go out and find and kill this giant sea creature so that it will stop being a menace to all the passengers and fishermen and people who are trying to cross the seas. So the professor is one of the people that's asked to go because he is a specialist in marine biology, and they go looking for it. The main characters in this story are the professor, his manservant, and a harpoonist slash fisherman named Ned, who is usually just referred to as the Canadian. They go out looking for the sea creature, and pretty quickly within the book, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this because this book is a classic, so I feel like most people know what this is about or have seen the movie or whatnot. But they figure out that this sea creature that they're hunting is actually a submarine. And at this time, submarines don't really exist. There was a submarine that was invented basically during the American Civil War, just a couple of years before this book was published, but it was like sunk right away and unsuccessful attempt at a submarine mostly. So this is really like submarines don't really exist at this time, and this is completely like an invention of Jules Verne's mind. And obviously this type of submarine that's indicated in this book is way far advanced of what submarines would have been able to do at the time, even if they had invented them. So ships at this time are like steam powered. And the captain of the ship is Captain Nemo. And he is a man that has forsaken humanity and refuses to ever set foot on land again. And he's kind of a crazy hermit guy. And they end up, these three main characters that I mentioned, fall off of their own ship and end up being rescued by Captain Nemo. But he holds them prisoner. Now that they know the secrets of his ship, he doesn't let them off. That's the plot, basically, is now they are Captain Nemo's prisoners and they are traveling around under the sea. So when the title of this book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I actually calculated how deep is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And what I learned is that there's no such thing. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is like 7.5 times the depth of like the diameter of the earth. So what it means when it's called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is the distance that they traveled, not the depth that they went, which I never realized before just now. Most of the time that they've been under the sea with Captain Nemo, it is like long descriptions of marine life, which apparently Jules Verne, I think, really just wanted to write a nonfiction book about everything he knew about marine biology and decided to put like a future sci-fi spin on it. So yeah, it's just like lists and lists and paragraphs of like Latin names of underwater life. and like crustaceans and anemones and types of seaweed and like phosphorescent critters, and like that's interesting to a point, but it is like there's no reason for this book to be this long is what I'm getting at. There's also some very outdated, politically incorrect language around people in foreign countries, which in this book are referred to as savages and cannibals and things like that. And it's really just talking about like normal people that live in Papua New Guinea. Obviously that's a little bit cringe, not unexpected for a book of this time, but I'm not having a good enough time in this book to look past that in a way that I might in a book that I was really having a great time with. So I would say this is feeling very much like a 2.5 to 3.5 star range, and that's a pretty big difference, but it depends on like what happens in the rest of the book. I have thought about DNFing this book because I am just ready for it to be over, and I'm ready to move on to something I'm actually going to enjoy reading. Hi, oh my goodness. Say hello to the people if you're going to be so obnoxious. Oh, struggle cat, struggle. So that's where we're at. That's what's happening. I have 180 pages to go or something like that. So I'll tune in and let you know how it ended and what my final rating is. But I really just want to fly through the rest of it so that I can be done with it. But it's not reading at a flying pace. So yeah. Oh yeah, and enjoy the snowfall, which is happening. That's probably the sound you can hear. I finished 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'm gonna land on a solid 3. I respect this book in a lot of ways. But for the most part, there was not a cohesive plot, or the plot wasn't plotted in like a story arc that you would learn like in English class. Things just kind of happened willy-nilly. Like some chapters, things happened that were super interesting and I was really engaged, and then some chapters like absolutely nothing happened, and there was no like build up and climax, and then there was no rhyme or reason for the things that happened in the order in which they happened. I did think that Jules Verne's, other than the fact that he goes on for way too long in way too many places about all of the like classifications of marine life, I did think that some of his writing was actually quite stunning and insightful and philosophical. And so I respect what he was doing and the reason that it is the classic that it has become. I think a retelling of this, maybe with like some gender swapped characters and a tighter plot line and less emphasis on biology, would actually be like a really fun read. So I hope that someone tackles that in the future. But yeah, so solid 3. I'm not sad that I read it, but I certainly don't think I will be recommending it to a lot of people unless they have specific interest in this sort of thing. So that's that. And next up, I'm going to tackle the last book for the vlog, which is going to be Remarkably Bright Creatures. I'm excited to start that one because I think having an octopus perspective will be super fun. I'll tune in and let you guys know what I've thought after I start Remarkably Bright Creatures. Remarkably Bright Creatures. I was under the impression, based on things I've heard around the interwebs, that this was a really charming, kind of cozy book about a older woman who becomes friends with an octopus at her local aquarium, and that we get perspective chapters from the octopus, which I was most excited about. So I started this book yesterday. I read 170 pages, so I'm almost exactly like halfway through. And it reads very quickly, but so far I'm not having a great time. And I'm so surprised by that because I feel like I've heard no bad things about this book so far. I think I would be enjoying this book a lot more if it was just about the woman and the octopus, but half of this book is from the perspective so far of a 30-year-old man named Cameron who is insufferable. He is such a loser. I can't stand him. He can't hold down a job. He can't hold down a relationship. He's like crashing on his friends' couches. He doesn't understand why everyone in life is so much more successful than him, and at the same time is like completely sleeping on all these opportunities that he has been given in life. He's such a sad sack. Like I don't feel sorry for him. He is the reason for his own misery and completely doesn't take responsibility for anything. And as of this point in the book, he has just gotten a job at the aquarium because he had to borrow money from his aunt that she had been saving up to go on this like dream vacation of hers that she'd been saving for like years. He had to borrow money. She gave him that money, and now he feels bad, so he's like gotten a maintenance job at the aquarium to pay her back. We'll see if he holds it down because he hasn't been able to so far. But I just do not care about him. I don't want to read about Cameron. He sucks. The rest of the story, the old woman's name is Tova, and I think the crux of her story is that she had a child who drowned when he was 18 years old. This is set in the Puget Sound area, like Northwest Washington, and her son drowned in the bay, I guess, when he was 18 years old. And this was like 30 years ago, I guess, at this point. She's been without a child for a very, very long time, and her husband just passed away 5 or 6 years ago, and at the start of the story she just finds out that her brother died, and her brother had been estranged for like the last 10 years. She's getting up there in age. I think she's in her 70s or potentially even 80s. She has a circle of friends that call themselves the Knitwits because they used to be a knitting circle. None of them pretty much knit anymore, and it seems like she's not actually close with these women. She knows them all really well because they've been getting together once a week for years and years and years, but it seems like she feels like an outsider in the circle because all these other women are mothers, and now that they're aging, they have people to visit for the holidays, and they have people to take care of them as they are getting older, and she has no one at this point in her life. So far, yeah, it's just really sad. The perspective chapters from the octopus, his name is Marcellus, are fun, but they're so short compared to the rest of the book. His chapters are usually like a page or two compared to these like chunk of the book that is about Cameron and Tova. And yeah, so far it's just kind of depressing. It doesn't seem like anyone has a very good life in this book. Marcellus is a prisoner, he calls himself, at the aquarium, and he knows the average lifespan of an octopus and knows that he has spent the majority of that life already in the aquarium and thinks that that's where he will die. And every chapter of his starts with like day 1339 in captivity or whatever, which is interesting. But I'm just not super interested. I don't care about this nearly as much as I hope to, and I can't stand Cameron. So I will maybe finish this today because like I said, it is reading really fast, but it's just fine so far.
your pandemonium.
Last clip of the vlog, because I did finish Remarkably Bright Creatures today as predicted. Unfortunately, I do not get the hype for this book. Cameron remains insufferable throughout. He's such a little twat. He is just so ungrateful. He's so disrespectful. He's such a loser. And nothing that happens really changes that. He has a very sudden and, in my opinion, unearned change of heart, like 6 pages before the end, and suddenly it's like turning a new leaf. And he took like a 6-hour nap at a rest stop on the freeway and then woke up and was like, guess I'll go back and patch things up. No, there was way too little octopus in this. Marcellus was a cool character, the octopus, and did not get the page time that he deserved, and Cameron was just sucking up all the air in this book. So, yeah, I'm still gonna give it 3 stars. I do understand, I think, why people like this book. It reads incredibly fast, and based on reading other people's experiences of reading it, I get that other people got things out of it that I did not. And so I don't have anything against the book. I guess I'm saying it's perfectly fine. This was a fine read, but in my opinion, very forgettable. This is not going to stick with me in any meaningful way. So that's that. I have 1 5-star, impeccable, beautiful, amazing, Our Wives Under the Sea, incredible book. And then 2 3-star books, which I'm so surprised by, but here we are at the end of the vlog. If I was going to rank these 2 against each other, I mean, I gave them both 3 stars. I think this one's definitely more readable and probably has much wider appeal to a modern audience, but this one I think engaged my imagination much more and is much more memorable in the long run. So I guess for that reason I would rank this one higher, but this one was, the reading experience was actually much more boring than this one was. So take that as you will. Thank you guys. If you're still here, thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me for a bit today. Let me know what you've been reading in the month of January, and like I said earlier, let me know about some good sea book recommendations, and I'll see you down in the comments.